So I think we all saw this as a possibility, even going into the offseason, but it was kind of confirmed in reporting yesterday by Kevin Acee and Dennis Lin that the Padres, trying to stay under the luxury tax level again, are probably going to have to trade someone at this point to have the financial flexibility that they're going to need to make it through the offseason. And one of the candidates, with just 1 year left of control, 1 year left on his contract, is going to be Dylan Cease. And the rumors started flying pretty heavily around the winter meetings yesterday that Dylan Cease was someone that is available, at least for discussion, with the San Diego Padres. Not surprising to me at all. It might even be the smartest move the Padres can make this offseason, getting future value for Dylan Cease, the way they did for Juan Soto last year, with 1 year left on his contract before he leaves for nothing, likely at the end of the 2025 season.
Yep. Scott Boras guy is going to want to get a tremendous bag, deserving of a tremendous bag. Not going to deny that. Certainly doesn't certainly feel like it's going to be a long-term situation with Dylan Cease. So you bite the bullet, you do what you have to do, you get back as much as you can. And, again, you ask yourself, all right, what would you want back for a Dylan Cease? Oh, I'd love some young, controllable starting pitching. Well, so would the team that's more than likely trading him to you. So what you're going to have to more than likely do is get back some really good young talent, then flip to someone else with maybe a surplus, right? And so you saw a little bit of this yesterday. We haven't talked about the Jimenez trade for Cleveland, and we'll talk to Chris Rose about that coming up shortly, big Guardians fan. But, yeah, man, you're going to have to get creative. I would imagine that the guys that you get back for a Dylan Cease, I don't know how many you actually keep, maybe one. But, I mean, you get 3 or 4 guys back, right, for a Dylan Cease?
Yeah, I mean, depends on the quality of the prospect. The better level the prospect, the fewer guys you get, or you take a little bit more. I'd hope that for someone of Dylan Cease's pedigree that, you'd be able to get a couple of guys who are going to impact very close to the major leagues or already young major leaguers. And, if it's not pitching, then Padres need to fill an outfield spot. Yep. They need a catcher.
Do you wait for Burns to see where Burns goes, and then you call the team that you heard was rumored to be in on Burns and say, all right, I know it's not Corbin Burns, but, hey, man, how about 180 innings of Dylan Cease this year? Granted, it will be a rental, as you know, but he's not going to cost you what Corbin Burns was going to cost you. It's just going to cost you 2 or 3 of your best prospects.
Well, I think there's multiple teams that would be very interested in Dylan Cease at a reasonable price, $13 to $14 million.
Yeah, very reasonable rental.
Even for one season. Yep. Any team that is like, we want to make the playoffs this year, is going to have to consider that strongly and be willing to mortgage some of their future for that opportunity to get Dylan Cease, especially if they don't land Corbin Burns. I mean, you can.
But if it doesn't happen, you also want to make the playoffs this year,
yes,
right? And you can pay him $13.7 million, we think, and go for it this year, and you run the risk of him walking away.
You don't give Dylan
you got to be blown
away unless you feel like it's truly going to improve your team, at the very least for the next 3 years, if not directly this year. And maybe that frees up a little bit money where you can add some other pitching, buy some innings at least. A guy who's going to be able to that's the hardest thing to replace with Dylan Cease. It's the innings that he is generally good for. 180, 200, that's what Dylan Cease is going to give you year in and year out.
Well, let me calm you down there, Ben, because based on this article in MLBTradeRumors.com, you lose Dylan Cease, but don't forget, you got Matt Waldron, Randy Vasquez. They're talking about Adrian Morejon as a starter, Brian Hoeing, and Stephen Kolek as potential back-end options available internally.
Well, AJ actually is the one who talked about that yesterday. That's not a rumor. That's straight from the horse's mouth. We got a couple of cuts here from AJ Preller yesterday, courtesy of our Sammy Levitt, who's going to join us a little bit later this morning at 9:35. But first of all, AJ was asked about the value of Dylan Cease and Michael King and whether there is a trade possibility out there.
You have 2 pitchers, very talented pitchers, in Michael King and Dylan Cease, who will be free agents at the end of the year. What's your current appetite for at least exploring their trade value in a starting pitching market that is generally pretty robust?
Yeah, I mean, again, in general, like, again, we have a team that ended the year. We feel like one of the better teams in the league, and a big part of it was because of Michael and Dylan. And I think for us getting to where we want to get to, you need super talented and quality starting pitchers. Those two have they were tremendous this year in terms of getting us there, and we look forward to them getting better next year and taking another step in their development, helping us get to where we need to get to. So. It's a time of year where our group, we're always open-minded. You always listen to, incoming phone calls and see what's out there. But again, it's those guys set a really high bar this year, and we're excited to see what they do next year.
All right, not a lot from AJ Preller there. He's certainly not going to tip his hand and go, yeah, we're definitely looking to move those guys or one of those guys.
Yeah, he's not John Mozeliak from the Cardinals. It's like, yeah, Nolan Arenado's as good as gone. Is he regrowing the stash? It looks like he shaved it off and he's regrowing the stash. We doing this again? All right.
Look like it is on its way toward another Seidler stash.
Boy, he's right in that awkward period. Maybe you wait till after the winter meetings.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you got a
started over the holidays.
Yeah, start over the holiday, bud. If that crust stash is kicking right now.
Meanwhile, you mentioned those guys that could be converted from the bullpen to starters. This is what AJ told Sammy yesterday about that.
At least right now, you have a couple of rotation spots open. Your organization has had a lot of success the last couple of years, stretching out relievers into starters, whether it was Seth Lugo, whether it was Michael King. At least right now, what level of exploration or at least a consideration is there in taking maybe somebody who's a reliever, say somebody with starting experience like an Adrian Morahone, and if you have a need, maybe trying something like that out with them?
Yeah, I think you mentioned like with whether it's Nick Martinez or Lugo or King, guys that we've targeted that in Lugo and King standpoint, that we're basically relievers that we feel like because of their style and their pitch mix or their delivery and their mindset, that they had a chance to be starting pitchers. Again, like we'll talk about it. I just mentioned, guys like Morihone or Hoeing or Stephen Kolick, have been guys that we've had conversations about, and there's a few others. We'll see. I think it's still kind of a TBD thing. It's still more internal conversation. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll try to give those pitchers in that group an idea of, hey, prepare for this, and be ready for this spot. But yeah, finding starting pitching is always a big thing, and the ability to take some really talented pitchers that have been in a certain role and expand that role or change that role. That's something that's been on the table for this offseason.
I think the idea of Adrian Morihone, going back to a starter, which is what their original plan was for him, is really intriguing. You can look at it two ways, Woods. He's finally had some success out of the bullpen. Why would you do anything to mess with that? You had a really solid left-handed reliever in Adrian Morihone. Now you're going to throw this at his plate. You're just tempting fate. You're messing with forces you shouldn't be messing with. At the same time, if he figured something out, he figured something out. And if he can get guys out in the 6th and 7th inning, why can't he get them out in the early innings as well? He has the potential with his stuff, left-handed, still fairly young. We feel like Adrian Morihone must have been, his mid-30s. What is Adrian Morihone, 20, 25, 26? He's not an old guy. There's plenty of time left for him to have a fantastic career, and it might be as a starting pitcher. Don't you owe it to your organization and Adrian Morihone to potentially take another look at that, this offseason into spring training?
Yeah. Look, you're up against it a little bit with what you have to spend. Not a little bit. You're up against it with what you have to spend. You do need to be creative. I tend to fall on the first part of your argument of like, hey, we finally found a role for him and he stayed healthy and was really effective at it. Let's not upset the apple cart, especially losing a Tanner Scott out of your bullpen. What if he fills the Tanner Scott role? Everybody happy with that? I am. Him getting injured again and spending 3 months on the IL doesn't do anybody any good. But, there's just no way to tell. Does he have what it takes to be a starting pitcher in this league? Not so far. Not so far. But I think it's definitely a conversation worth having. He's got 2 years left of control. I think, try it and see what happens. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to the bullpen if you're healthy. So, give it a shot. Give it a look. Talk to the player and see if the player is down to do it. But if he ends up being the 7th inning man, I'm not going to be mad at it. He was really effective.
I think the Padres look at their their upper minor leagues, and there are some arms up there that could become relievers. I mean, Sean Reynolds was one that we saw a taste of last year. That the bullpen could be pretty good. That you could use some of those pieces. Hoeing did actually start some for the Marlins. He doesn't have swing and miss stuff, which worries me a little bit. You're facing 5 innings of guys with a lot of contact off of Brian Hoeing, but he was very effective in the bullpen. So, that is a possibility there. And as for Kolek, I know people are rolling their eyes. There's a reason why AJ Preller took him and kept him on a roster all year long. He must. Well,
he had to because he got him in the Rule 5.
Well, yeah, but he must think fairly highly of his potential.
Yeah, there's something there he likes.
We haven't seen it yet, but there's something there that he likes, and now he's part of that organization, so he should be in the mix somewhere.